You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad and writer who has been living in my 1997 Ford van since January 1st of 2019. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living Podcast. I am your host, Holly Priestley, and this week's guest is Captain Good Vibes himself, Matt Alexander, and his pup Stella makes a brief cameo if you're watching the YouTube version. While recording the podcast, Matt and I touched on so many different topics that I think are incredibly important, and we will be having multiple episodes coming down the pipeline about some of those issues specifically. But while we were talking, we got a little carried away on time. And so I've broken up this interview into two separate episodes to keep it from being one mega episode. So this week you'll get part 1, and next week you'll get part 2. As a result, the ending of this episode may sound a little bit unfinished, but to be sure, that is intentional, and next week we will wrap it all up. And as I said, in the future we will be diving really deep on some of the things that we talk about in this interview, as well as some of the things that we said off camera. So I hope you guys enjoy. Matt has been living on the road for about 3 years in his Sprinter. He started off as half of a couple, and after about 6 months to a year, transitioned into living on the road by himself. He has often, although not always, had a small canine companion with him, and he sustains his life on the road as a videographer and video producer. So let's dive in. So you've been in your van for 3 years now, and you first moved into your van with a girlfriend. And then at what point did you start doing it solo? And what was that transition like from like having a person, having a safe space, a safe person to be with, and like being on your own and having to then navigate the whole world and van life as a solo person?
No, it's a great question, and it's a long question, so get ready because I don't tell short stories.
All right, perfect.
So started out in 2017 in Orlando, Florida. I did the typical YouTube university, looking at everything, trying to figure it all out, but I ended up over-researching to the point where I built my van in the summer of 2017 in Florida. So it was hot as shit and miserable. So we got out of there as soon as possible. I was with my girlfriend at the time who initially actually got me into van life by mentioning that her friend was doing it and showing me that it was a possibility. I didn't even know it was being done. I had just gotten off of a backpacking trip the last year for about 90 days on the no plan, which I think everyone should do, the solo no plan trip. It's the best. And that kind of gave me a whole different perspective on what I wanted to do and how I wanted to run my life. And so when I got back, she showed me that, and I was like, wait a second, this is backpacking on steroids. This is the ability to have those experiences that I was having all overseas, where I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm never going to meet these people again. I'm going to go walk up to their table and ask if I can eat dinner with them. You know, that kind of like, fuck it mentality is really what you need. And when I was there, I was having that mentality, and I was excited by all the responses because people hear your story. They hear you're just out there, you know, living your dream, and they're like, come be a part of this. Come see my life. I want to share this with you. And those kind of interactions are what lit me up. I was like, this is living. This is enjoying the journey. This is truly, you know, living a passionate life and an exciting life. And so I didn't want to just talk about that to people for the rest of my life as the nostalgic time when I really lived when I was traveling. I wanted to say, how can I do that full time? How can I continue to have these experiences, but take care of maybe the little things like making sure I have a safe, dry place to sleep and that I have a place to cook my meals. And so when I found the van as an opportunity, I was like, oh, I can do all those things. I can take care of all the little things, and I can still travel. I can still work and make enough money and have those awesome experiences, meeting people and going out. And so that was kind of the catalyst that got me into van life. Now, to go back to your question, specifically with another person, I definitely was happier to go into it with another person at that time, because I saw van life as very much a single dudes and couples environment. And yeah, well, and it was a lot of single, no single females. I feel like I never met single females when I was starting out. And so
they're not as common. We are now.
no.
But we definitely.
And I'll talk to that because I think there's a lot of people, you included, that are making space for solo females, and I think that's a big part of why we're at where we're at now. So thank you, and thanks to the other women out there that made space for that. The big thing for me was I wanted to be social still. I'm a very social guy, and I thought, man, van life, like, what's it going to be like? How's it going to be? And so being with someone else was a little bit of a comfort blanket. I feel like it ended up being more of a, I don't mean this in like a super negative way, but an anchor, because we moved to Denver and she was working at a restaurant in Denver. And so we became living in a van in Denver, weekend warriors, or Monday, Tuesday when she would get off her weekends. And then, everything else was basically the typical baloney. We were living out in the Denver Tech Center. Since Denver, I'll tell you, we were at a DTC, which sucks. Right. It's all business, and yeah. And so it was not the experience that I was looking for. And so I think that was, it quickly allowed our relationship to progress through the issues and realize that this wasn't the right fit, which is what van life does. It fast forwards all relationships. Yeah, and you can't hide from things.
Van time is such a different time.
Oh yeah, especially relationships, which we can touch on later. But the key with that was basically got there, had someone, but then had to be considerate of that person. So one house, one car. I'm trying to grow my video production business. I'm getting leads and opportunities, not just in Colorado, but wherever they come from. So I don't want to limit myself. And then if I got a job in Houston to shoot a portfolio, I had to leave for 2 weeks and I needed to find a house and a car for that individual. And so that was really tough, because then I realized, man, every time I want to go do something, I'm having to inconvenience my other significant other. And so I think what I got to at the end of all of that was, I really like my space and I don't want to share it. And when I say that in all kindness, but I mean it. I would love to have someone come be in my space. Don't get me wrong, but I think having their own space is really important. And when you lose that, you lose your own personal individuality, and you lose that ability to make decisions for yourself instead of having to do it for somebody else. And so I'm trying to bring the word selfish back, because I think it's a very good word. People call it self-care now. You can call it what you want, but selfishness is good. Knowing what you want, knowing what you makes you happy, so that you're a more full person to the people around you. Yeah. And so that was my big thing, was when we broke up and split after about 6 months, then it started to really open up the van life. I left Denver and went to Quartzsite, Arizona for RTR. And then from there went to San Diego for the meetup out there, and started to see all the community and meet all the people and have the true experience of van life. And that's when I was like, oh shit. And so even though I was using my girlfriend at the time for a crutch, it was actually an anchor. It was limiting me from getting out there and seeing all the other people and being able to live it. And so I think it's really important for people to have their own space. And I know couples are going into it together, so that's a different story. But if you're a solo, I think stay solo. Realize that this journey is something for you to figure out what you like, how you find happiness, making decisions for only yourself and no one else. Like, those are all valuable parts of finding out who you are, whether you do that in a van or on a solo backpacking trip somewhere across the country. You just need to do it. You need to have that experience, because it will not only give you that confidence to know that you can go through anything without any worry. I have no fucking clue how I'm going to get everything done that I've set out to do, but I get it done. And that's the fun. The journey is the process. It's all about figuring out how to do it and doing things you never thought you could accomplish. And you're never going to get there if you're always second guessing yourself and sitting on the sideline.
Fully agree. I started doing van life by myself I had been single for 2 years. And then the first year that I lived in the van, I was fully single. And I did a little bit of caravanning with other people, but I didn't even do that much caravanning. Like the majority of 2019, I was just doing my own thing. And, 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more at this point, but 4 or 5 years ago, definitely, like I had so much social anxiety. I couldn't even go to the grocery store by myself. And I've said this on the podcast before. So like, it definitely was a process for me to go from like, I can't even get my food by myself to like, I'm going to move into a van by myself with my dog, obviously. And I also don't think that I would have been able to do it without her, but I think that, the first year on the road being by myself and like not even caravanning, much less having a romantic interest or like sharing my space with somebody. I can't even, like, the van is quite large for one person, but it is way too small for two people.
I agree. I felt the same way about mine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot just for me and the dog, but at the same time, I don't necessarily want a full timer with me in this rig. But yeah, like figuring out like I could go where I wanted to go when I wanted to go. So then I had to learn who I am and what I want. Like I can go anywhere I want. Where do I want to go?
What do I want?
What do I want? What is a good like morning routine look like for me? What is a good, like, I need to get from point A to point B. It's this many miles. If I can do it in like 2 days, or I could break it up and make it take a week. Like, but these are all my decisions that I get to make for myself. And that was, at the time, I didn't realize it was a learning, growing experience. It was just like, oh, this is life. I'm going to figure it out. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, oh, I'm really grateful that I had that, and that I didn't just like hop in with a relationship or get a relationship right away, or even, like I said, caravan with other people, because then, you know, like, I love the people I caravan with. Obviously, I choose to travel with them, but there's just something about doing it by all by yourself, fully alone, that is just so recommended.
No, it's so true. And the caravans are exciting and they're intriguing, but you can also get pulled in, and you can realize you're like, wait, do I want to still be here, or am I like still here because I feel like I need to be? And I think that if you can get yourself through the personal stage before you go to like a big gathering, a van gathering and whatnot, I think that's a huge thing. I know some people that literally drove from wherever they built their van to a van gathering, and that was the first thing they ever did. Yeah.
Well, that was the first thing I ever did. I moved into my van on January 1st and drove straight to Quartzsite.
Yep. And then did you caravan after, or were you able to separate?
After that, I separated. Yeah.
Cool.
I had to get back to Denver for some appointment or something. And at the time, it was really annoying because I wanted to caravan because everyone else was going to go have this like super fun adventure, and I had to go be boring and do responsibilities. But now, after the fact, I'm so glad that I didn't caravan, and I was able to just reset and do my own thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to do that, and we can easily get brought in, whether it's a caravan or a significant other that we meet along the way. And it's hard when our emotions get involved to not go forward with what feels right. But if you can look from the 30,000 foot view before you meet that person and say, this is what I'm going to do, you're much better off. So for all of you van curious future van lifers out there, make sure that you take the time to really focus on yourself, focus on what you want and figuring out what you want and how best to live your life of happiness. Because when you figure that out, you're going to be such a better person. You're going to be so much more enjoyable to be around. So we can't wait to have you with us in a caravan one day, but go do you first so that you're nice and ready when you come to the group. Yeah. You got to go be seasoned by yourself before you can really play with the flavor of the group. Exactly. Go jump and take a couple creek showers before you come our way, and we'll be waiting for you. Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that Matt and I have both noticed through our own experiences and through the van community as a whole is that the first year on the road typically goes about the same way for everyone.
So the key thing that I noticed after living 3 years on the road was that I started like so many of us start, and I did the first year Checkbox tour. Now, what I mean by that is I was so excited when I was building my van that I wanted to get all these things done when I actually got into van life. So I'm dreaming on the internet, and I want to go to Zion and Yellowstone, and I want to hit all these parks and blah, 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 blah. So we all did it, right? We've all been there. And when you get out into van life, you do that. You are moving. You are accomplishing all these parks. You got your parks pass, so you're like, I got to get to all of them in this year. And you're chasing through places. I remember I went to Montana, and other than like Bozeman and Missoula, the first year I was in van life, that was it. It was like Bozeman, Missoula, and Glacier. That's all that Montana is. And then I'm moving on to next. I got to hit the Cascades, and then Olympic National Park, blah, 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 right? The second year, I realized that I was doing this. I started to learn, okay, I am checkbox touring. I am trying to get all this stuff accomplished. Am I enjoying each checkbox? That was the next step. It was like, am I doing this for the right reasons? And what I learned was sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. But what the next step for me was, I need to start doing it not for anyone else, but doing it for myself. And so that was the shift into what I call the slow life, or the slow lane. And I highly suggest that you get there or start to look into it, because for me, when you start to slow down, you catch so many more things that you are flying through. You know, I'll just go back to Montana, for instance, because now I'm on my third year, and I just got done spending about a month and a half in Montana, and it was amazing. I think I went into the national park maybe one day. Absent of that, I went all over to places that I had never heard of before, and got to meet locals and connect. It wasn't just in the tourist spots, which is what you don't realize with the checkbox tour, is that you're going where everyone else wants to go. So you're only meeting those people. You're not actually getting to know the locals. You're not meeting the people that are in those communities that have real connections to the area and know all the places that those tourists and you don't know about, that aren't on the map, because there's a lot of those as well. And so when you realize the importance of slowing down, not only will the universe start to throw so many things at you, but you will get opened up and welcomed into opportunities and experiences that you never would have thought you would have. And so I love to give this analogy of the highway versus the road. I like to live on the road. I like to drive on the road that goes through the small towns, that goes along the beach, that goes to the communities of the people that I really want to meet. Everyone can jump on the highway, and they can probably get there faster than I would. That's okay. I'm not in a rush. The important thing for me is about enjoying that journey, enjoying the process all along the way, and learning to slow down and not think that you have everything figured out, because you're not going to know half of the experiences that you're going to have. You're not going to plan. You're not going to be able to plan. You need to just have the space, have the time to be able to say yes to that person that you meet along the road that says, hey, we're going to this slot canyon down here. Have you ever heard of Lower Antelope? No. What's that? Can I go with you? Boom, you're on some new adventure. But if, I got to, nope, I've got a booked tour, blah, 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 somewhere else. Don't do that. Slow yourself down, make less appointments, and leave that openness to pivot and change so that you really can live that amazing life of unknown occurrences and experiences that are going to blow you away.
Yeah, I think that it's incredibly common, like you said, for the first year of living in the van on the road to be very destination focused and very you're amped up and you're excited with all this new freedom that you have. And so you're going to take advantage of it, and you're going to go, 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 go. And I've talked about this in a few other episodes. One of the biggest ones being the 4 biggest mistakes that I made living on the van. And one of them was moving too fast and being a little bit destination addicted. And if you approach it that way, you're missing so much. Yeah. And you're probably building up the destinations that you're trying to go to unreasonable expectations in your head, and then you get there and they're crowded and touristy. That's why you heard about them. And maybe they're not as cool as you think, so then you get a little bit disappointed. So you're moving too fast, you're not enjoying the moment, you're not enjoying the journey, you're just going, and you're disappointing yourself by having such big expectations, or got to take a picture of it and put it on the gram, got to do it for the gram, got to let everybody know that I made it to this iconic place. And it's fine to do that, But like you said, you have to examine why and if you're actually enjoying it. And if you're just doing it for the gram, if you're just doing it to check off the box and be like, oh yeah, I visited all 50 states, I visited all however many national parks, I visited all of the high points, like whatever it is. If you're just trying to check off a box and you're not actually enjoying it, like that should be the only box you're worried about. Did I enjoy this?
Yep.
Yes. No, whatever.
And am I doing it for the right reasons? Like, you just mentioned two things that just popped in my head, like the states thing. I had to catch myself, I think it was year one, maybe year two, where I was like, I'm pretty close to Minnesota, and if I drive this way through it, then I'll be able to count that as a state. And then I said to myself, that doesn't fucking matter. I didn't get to see the state, so I shouldn't be able to count it anyway, you know? And then that's that mentality of like, am I going to just say that I've done this many states and I'm, you know, using those little parameters to get higher numbers, or am I actually experiencing the state? You know, yes, maybe I've driven through the bottom half of Minnesota, but if someone really asked me now, have you been to Minnesota? I say no, I haven't. I've just driven through a very small corner of it and never seen it. And I think that was the big thing for me, was realizing, don't do that just to have that saying or whatever, you know. It was like we talked about going all the way to the tip of Baja, and it sounded cool to go from the tip of Baja to the tip of Alaska. And, but yet I was like, do we really want to drive that far down? There's a lot of awesome places in Baja that we don't need to go all the way to Cabo. We don't need, you know, those kind of talks have been going in my head where I'm like, I don't need to do it just to say I went from the tip to the tip. I want to go and have the best time. So let's just do that. Let's just go to those places instead. And that's a big shift, I think, which, you know, a lot of people, they do the Checkbox tour in their van, and then sometimes they just get out of van life, which I'm totally fine with. I think we're creating our version of the Australian 1 year tradition, where I don't know if you've experienced this, but a lot of times when I was traveling, I met backpackers from Australia, and a lot of them were on a year trip. And it's pretty common culturally to take a year after college or sometime in your life to early on to get out and see the world and see what else is out there. And I think it's a huge opportunity to broaden your perspective on life.
I love that.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, let me just go ahead and give a big props to Melbourne, Australia. I feel like the coolest people I've ever met in my journeys have been either from Melbourne or from New Zealand. And so big up to the culture. They're much more open-minded to travel. And so what I'm hoping is America is kind of establishing this little tradition of van life, the new version, right? The OGs have been doing it in the Vanagons for years, but our new version of van life is kind of becoming a popular thing. And I'm okay with that because I think it's good for people to get around the country and travel and see all the different places there are. If you've lived in the Northeast for your whole life or the South for your whole life, you don't know about, you know, Grand Staircase Escalante. You don't know about volcanic mountains. You don't know about what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And the big one for me was Zion. When I went to Zion with my dad, I realized that I didn't know. I know that I don't know, and that's why I continue to travel. It's that is something I love to say, because that willingness to accept that you don't know is what's going to allow you to learn more and to grow more as a person. And the fact that I had never been to Zion and it was so epic and I was so blown away, I said, if I didn't know this existed, what else do I not know exists? And so that was that catalyst that got me going. Man, I want to get out there. Man, I want to see this. Man, I want to go. And it started with the national parks, and that's fine. It can start whatever gets you excited. Yeah. But that was my starter. That was my oh my gosh, what else is out there kind of moment. And it was really an impactful part of my life.
Oh my gosh, I love that, especially that as like the catalyst. I moved around as a kid, and we were always traveling. We were always camping and road tripping and stuff. And I did live in New Mexico for a while, so I understand the Southwest. I get the landscape. I understand, like, it wasn't really cool to me because I did spend so much time there. But now when I leave and I come up to places like Montana, etc., I'm always blown away by how green they are and how lush they are. Mm-hmm. And then I spend a bunch of time here, and I love it. I appreciate it. I get to have fall, which I never had. Yep. But then when I go back and I visit, or, you know, I winter in warmer places, I'm always like, oh yeah, this is pretty too. But if you just spend all your time in like one spot, not only does it lose its luster, but everything else is just, it's out there not being appreciated.
And you don't know what you don't know in the same sense. So you know that this exists, but you don't know all the other topographies that exist, and the climates and the way that they shift and the seasons change, and the length of the seasons and how the leaves change. And there's so many things that are different in all different regions. And you won't know it until you get out there and experience it.
Is there any other piece of advice that you would give to a van curious person that we haven't touched on in this particular episode? I know we're going to have multiple episodes in the future where we go really, really deep. But we don't want this one to be 3 hours long.
Yeah, no worries. I think I did say it, but I'll just mention it again because I think it's so important. And that is that unknown, that black hole that you aren't exactly sure how you're going to get there, how you're going to solve that problem. That's okay.
Yeah.
You're always going to have that black hole. It's always not going to be fully clear about how things are going to work out, but confidence in knowing that it's going to work out, that will get you so far in life, because your willingness to go through that journey and not be afraid and anxious about it is going to help you. And you're not going to know all the things that are going to come in place and how the universe is going to bring people to you and all the things that you don't know, is going to exist. It's going to happen, but you've got to get out there and you got to take that jump and don't look back. That's my advice.
Yeah. People ask me all the time, like, what's the best part about living in a van? And they want me to say like, oh, I get to go anywhere I want, whenever I want. And honestly, the best part about living in a van is the sense of capability that I've gotten and the sense of confidence and like self-sufficiency. Like,
yes.
I'm a strong, independent woman who don't need no man or woman or any, like I could take care of my goddamn self. Yep. But living in the van has definitely given me so much more of that feeling than I ever had before. People are like, what's going to happen if you're like on some bumpy dirt road with no cell service and you run over the biggest nail you've ever seen in your life and you get a flat tire? Like, you know what? I didn't know, but I've done that. And so now I know, and it's fine. And I figured it out. And like, I didn't have cell service to figure out how to even get the spare tire off of the bottom of my van, but now I know. And I figured it out on my own.
And that experience is going to pay forward for you long term because you did it yourself, and now you know how to do it. And I think that's the important part. There's the like logistics of knowing how to change your own tire, but then there's like the emotional side of like, oh yeah, I mean, obviously I was going to figure that out because I figure things out. And there's like that I don't know, that more subtle, less calming your emotional side and saying it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because there's the logic side and then there's the emotional side. And the quicker we can disconnect the two, the better. And just understanding, hey, I'm emotionally feeling a little distraught about this, but I know I'm going to be fine. I'm going to handle this and figure it out. And I'll tell you, a lot of times when those kind of situations happen, I tend to just say, stop the car, grab some wine, make some dinner, go to bed, and deal with it in the morning. Because we live in our homes, we're already home, so it doesn't really matter. And a lot of times I've been stuck plenty of times before. I've put gasoline in my diesel engine on my way home to Orlando on a 3-day. So this is when I was back in Colorado and I went back to go see a client. And so I was 3 days back to back was driving way too much in one day than I should have. This is when I first started. And BP gas station, all green logos for their gas pumps. They're the only one that does green for gas and black for diesel. And so I put the green thing in my freaking truck and filled up my whole van. Didn't turn it on. I was lucky. I didn't turn it on. Right. So I was able to realize it. And then I said, all right, well, this is where I'm sleeping tonight. I went in and talked to the guy at the counter and said, hey, I'm just let you know, this is what I did. I've got a AAA coming, but who knows when they're going to come. He's like, yeah, you're fine. Went back, made dinner, had a drink, watched a little TV, went to bed, woke up to the AAA guy on my phone. He's like, you can stay in your van. I'll go ahead and tow you. And I said, can you tow me to the closest mechanic? And he's like, yeah, they're not open till 8. I said, no worries, just tow me. So at 3 a.m, he tows me to the closest mechanic, and this was in Atlanta. and I slept there the rest of the night. And then I just woke up and walked into the mechanic shop. They siphoned the gas and I was on my way.
Oh my goodness.
But those are the kind of experiences that you have in van life that teach you that it's going to be okay. Like you can solve the problem anything that happens, it's going to be okay. And if anything, we're more suited to be able to handle those ups and downs because I've got my whole life here. I've got my computer here. I've got my kitchen here. I don't have to go anywhere to get all those creature comforts. And so being able to say, it's all right, I'm going to be fine. I'm just going to go in and deal with this. That is something that I feel like having the van, I have more confidence now. I'm like, whatever, I can pivot, any situation, it's fine.
Yeah, I completely agree. There are definite like benefits to having your entire house with you all the time. Cons for sure. Like if you have to leave your van at the mechanic for a few days, like you're out a house and a car, but if something happens and you're stuck somewhere, like you have your house.
You're still home. You can still cook dinner. You don't have to get anywhere. There's a lot there. And it's a comfort thing. Definitely. I feel really good about it. I feel like I've grown into my van over the years.
Yeah.
And I think that's something people may not mention, or may do. I don't know. But I've like grown into it. It's a part of me now. Like the way it's set up and the way that I flow through it, how I do my morning coffee. I love like feeling like it complements me now because I'm able to live in it, and I'm all about user experience as we talked about earlier. Yep. So that just dialing in, I like to overanalyze on things. So it's like I'll dial in on the user experience and really set up so that it's nice and simple and everything's set. And but once you get it right, kind of like mise en place, kind of like you see the million things in my van. Well, everything is where it's supposed to be. Everything is exactly in the right spot, and that helps this relax and calm down. And I've realized that. So, I just learned how to make it work to keep me at a nice, happy place.
Awesome. I think that's another huge benefit is that if you're living in a van, you can have it so customized to what you need mentally and physically. And you can kind of do that in houses, but it's just different. It's a different extent. And yeah, I think that's.
I call it our canvas. Each van is our personality on canvas. You get to see why you made those decisions, and that's why I love doing van tours with people, because it's like, well, why'd you do this, or why'd you do that, or you did it that way? Well, why? Because then it's like, oh, I'm going to learn from your analysis, and you did. Oh, cool. You just never know, and there's so many creative people in our community that I love learning from them and seeing different ways that people do things. It's a neat part of it, and we all share that commonality, like you said, with the van, so we're able to kind of start there. And then if you've built your own van, well, then I'm pretty sure you're a pretty level-headed person, because you wouldn't get through the whole process if you weren't.
Not even a little bit. Yeah, you have to be a certain kind of person to decide and then follow through with building out a van. And that's where I'm going to cut it for this first episode with Matt Alexander. Next week, we will continue the talk about van builds. We will get into van build theory, as well as discussing how to stay in touch on the road with friends and family across the country. So I hope you guys tune in next week for the second half of this conversation with Matt. We've reached the end of this episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything we referenced over on my website, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on YouTube, or sign up for email updates every time something new is published. I'll see you next time on Deliberate Living, and until then, keep your life on the DL too.